And we are back on Big Board Sports as promised, joined by Manish Mehta, New York Daily News. We're talking NFL football. We're talking Darrelle Revis. Good morning, Manish. Rodger, Wyland, ESPN Radio in Albany, along with Zach By. How are you this morning?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
We are great. Appreciate a few minutes. The Revis thing has been headlined since last week of exactly what happened downtown Pittsburgh last weekend. Do you have the latest for us?
Well, he has a preliminary hearing on Thursday addressing the four first-degree felony charges and the one misdemeanor charge. Now, he has made a smart decision in hiring Robert Del Greco, who's kind of been the Mr. Fix-It attorney out in western Pennsylvania. He's had a litany of high-profile clients, celebrities, athletes, a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers recently. And typically his MO is that he will get these charges reduced. And I would anticipate, unless there's a smoking gun video of Darrelle Revis actually punching one of these two guys on the street corner, that his charges would at the very least be reduced. Now, how long that takes, of course, remains to be seen. The legal system works very slowly, as you guys know. So the Jets really have to make a decision one way or the other within a few weeks when Darrelle Revis' $2 million roster bonus is due. If they want to keep him, they're obviously going to ask him to take a pay cut. If not, they're just going to cut him loose. But either way, a decision from the football side is going to be made within a couple weeks.
I found it very interesting how people rush to judgment here on Revis. If you really do your homework on Revis, I mean, his track record does not go down this road at all.
Well, he's never been in trouble with the law, that's for certain. Now, that's not to say that he's completely innocent here. None of us really knows the truth. I've heard both versions of the truth, some publicly, some privately. Now, privately, Revis' people have told their version of the truth. It seems fairly clear is that Revis was out there at around 2:30 by himself initially. And, you want these guys to be able to live their lives, of course, but if you're a public figure like Darrelle Revis, and you're in a bar type of setting, in a bar area, that late at night, I just think that you've got to make wiser choices and be smarter about this. This isn't his first rodeo. He's not a rookie here. He's been in the spotlight for the better part of a decade. I think you got to be careful because you never know when someone's going to come up, and ask for an autograph or ask for photos or do whatever. And again, I don't think that he was the aggressor here initially, but that doesn't mean that things didn't turn the other way later on in the interaction with these two guys. Again, we just don't know right now.
Manish, you've covered the New York Jets as closely as anyone, and you know Darrelle Revis' voice. After knowing that, do you think that that's his voice on that video that surfaced? No,
that's not his voice. Absolutely not. I mean, I think there's a 0% chance that that's his voice. It's just not. I've been around him long enough, as you said, and I know what he sounds like. That's not him. That doesn't mean that he was not involved, however. I don't know if he was standing next to this person as we heard this person's voice because this person was out of frame. We didn't actually see him. I don't know if Darrelle Revis fled the scene. But I do know what seems fairly concrete is that two guys were knocked out, and they didn't knock each other out. So somebody was responsible for that. I don't know if it came from Revis' fifth. I don't know if it came from one of Revis' buddies. My understanding is that he did come from an acquaintance / friend of his. Does that make him any less culpable? It's clearly much better if he didn't throw the punch, but I think if he's still involved in that situation, that's something that certainly the NFL will look into regardless of what the courts ultimately decide.
We are talking with Manish Mehta here on Big Board Sports this morning, New York Daily News. Darrelle Revis story front and center. Manish, even before this incident, though, I don't think Revis, in terms of what he did on the field last year and then decisions the Jets had to make right now, I'm not sure they weren't leaning towards maybe moving on from Darrelle Revis to begin with. Does this give the Jets a big window of opportunity here to cut ties with Revis?
Well, I think I'm going to make it a little bit more complicated if they want to recoup some of the $6 million in guarantees he's owed this year. In terms of trying to void his contract, because it gets a little bit tricky. I believe the player actually has to be a member of the team, whether he's on an exempt list or on your roster, at the time of a league suspension for a team to actually recoup the money. My take has always been it's not really worth the headache. As you said, his play really declined last year. I think more disturbing was the lack of effort. Now, clearly his skills have eroded. and he's a liability in many respects as a cornerback and have an interception. I think the last 5 minutes of the season when he picked off Cardell Jones in a meaningless final fourth quarter of 2016. He wasn't a difference maker, and the question now becomes, do you want to pay him $6 million to learn a new position, safety, at the age of 32, or do you just want to cut ties and not deal with this headache? Because regardless of whether Revis is found guilty or innocent or whether these charges are reduced or ultimately dropped, the point is that it's not going to be resolved anytime soon. So why would the Jets want this hanging over their head with a player who's not really a factor anymore? If this was a 26 or 27-year-old Darrelle Revis who got into hot water, then by all means, you got to stick with him. The guy's a tremendous player at that point in his career. But at this stage in the twilight, I don't think you're getting enough return for the distraction and the headache that you're going to have to deal with as an organization. So you're right. It was not a guarantee at all that he would have been back. I don't know if it makes much sense for him to return, but again, we're going to find all that out in the first week of March.
Manish, last question for me. On Monday, you wrote, Darrelle Revis is making a fool out of Woody Johnson. Can you briefly, for our listeners, summarize what you meant by that?
Sure. This is a guy in Woody Johnson who trusted Darrelle Revis, believed in Darrelle Revis, drastically overpaid to bring Darrelle Revis back at a time when nobody else in the league was willing to give him anywhere close to $39 million in fully guaranteed money, and that's what he got in his 5-year, $70 million deal. Woody Johnson had second thoughts in listening to John Idzik a few years ago and trading him to Tampa, kind of always wanted him back, and then having Revis win a Super Bowl with the Jets' arch enemy, New England, really drove Woody Johnson to push for a Revis return and a revival. And even before the events that took place last week in Pittsburgh occurred, Woody wasn't getting the bang for his buck. Darrelle Revis made $17 million last year. Again, didn't put forth a real professional effort, and that really more than anything embarrassed Woody Johnson. But now you throw this on top of it, regardless of, again, how it shakes out. The bottom line is that Darrelle Revis was involved in this situation, whether it was partly his fault or fully his fault or just a minimal part of it was his fault. The bottom line is that he found himself in that position, and it's not a good look not only for Darrelle Revis, but it's clearly an embarrassment for the organization and something that doesn't sit well with the owner right now.
Manish, on a much lighter note, we'll end on this. Where does the quarterback situation stand with this Jets team right now, and how interested are they in Tony Romo?
They'd love to have Tony Romo. They're also smart enough to realize that Tony Romo has no interest in them, as he shouldn't. At this stage of his career, he's looking for a place that can help him win a Super Bowl and be a viable Super Bowl contender over the next year or two. Clearly, the Jets don't fit that description. So in a vacuum, would the Jets like Tony Romo? Absolutely. Do they think they have any chance at getting him? In fact, they know they don't have really much of any chance. So he's not going to be a part of the equation. They don't believe that the future of the quarterback position is on their roster. They're hopeful that Bryce Petty can develop and grow into being a number 2 quarterback in the NFL. And everybody I've talked to about Christian Hackenberg doesn't believe that he is ready to even compete for a starting job in 2017. So their short-term answer is going to have to come through free agency. It's going to be another Band-Aid before they ultimately figure out what the best course of action is in terms of getting a franchise quarterback. When you look at the draft next year in 2018, it's a deeper draft, it's a richer draft, especially at the top. UCLA's Josh Rosen, USC Sam Darnold, both of those quarterbacks are expected to come out, and both of those quarterbacks are projected to be better than any quarterback in this year's draft.
Manish Mehta, always great to have you on our program here on Big Board Sports in Albany. We appreciate a few minutes.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Manish Mehta from the New York Daily News. And, yeah, Donald, that's the quarterback who scorched my Penn State Nittany Lions in the Rose Bowl.
Really good.
He is awfully, awfully good. Thank you, Manish Mehta. Great stuff on the latest on Darrelle Revis.